Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch our next video.
Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Black Jewelries and join us for more powerful.
Y'all smell that? Dylan Cole didn't even lift his eyes off his phone. He just wrinkled his nose toward the door like something had crawled in off Murfreesboro Pike. And Ashley Pruitt snorted behind the register, arms crossed over her green Sweetwater table apron. "Sir, this ain't the mission down the road," she said. "You got money, or you just here for the air conditioning?" Standing just inside the door said nothing. He wore a faded navy windbreaker, the zipper worn shiny at the pull. Dark jeans, a pair of white running shoes gone gray at the toe. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He walked forward slow and steady, hands loose at his sides, like a man who had absolutely nowhere else to be. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Ashley snapped her gum. "Deaf or just slow this morning?" The man glanced up at the menu board mounted above the fryer line. His voice came out low, even unhurried. "Country breakfast platter, eggs, scrambled soft, extra biscuit, please. $12.49. You sure about that?" Ashley's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. The man set a 20 on the counter, smoothed flat with 2 fingers. No reaction, no expression, just quiet. These two had no idea who they had just insulted or what it was about to cost them by lunchtime. That morning had started 3 hours earlier and 40 minutes away, in a house on a quiet cul-de-sac in Brentwood, Tennessee, where Marcus Bell woke up at 5:14 a.m. sharp, same as he did every day of his life, whether the alarm went off or not. The house was large but plain, clean lines, warm oak floors, no marble, no gold trim, nothing that screamed money at you the second you walked through the door. A hallway ran from the kitchen to the garage, lined with framed photographs he'd walked past 10,000 times and stopped looking at somewhere on phototimer some moments ago. One picture showed a 27-year-old Marcus standing in front of a single wide trailer with a hand-lettered plywood sign nailed above the door. "Whitwater table, Obergrand opening March, 1997. Another showed him shaking hands with the mayor of Nashville at a ribbon cutting 19 years later. A third was a framed magazine cover, curled slightly at one corner. From Disquesher to 84 million, the quiet rise of Marcus Bell. He didn't look at any of them this morning. He had somewhere to be. In the bathroom, he studied his reflection for a moment longer than usual. Then he reached past his charcoal suit jacket, hanging on the closet, pulled out the faded navy windbreaker instead. Jeans with a soft crease worn into the knee. The same white running shoes he kept in a shoebox marked, in his own handwriting, "Do not on." No watch, no ring, no cologne. He opened the garage. A black Range Rover sat beside a 12-year-old Toyota Camry with a Tennessee Titans bumper sticker peeling at one corner. He took the Camry keys off the hook. This was something Marcus did 4 times a year. No calendar reminder, no pattern anybody could predict. He called it walking the floor. He'd drive out to one of his 42 Sweetwater table locations, sales dressed like a man who had nothing to his name. And he'd really watch how his staff treated people who looked like they had nothing either. Before he backed out of the driveway, he clipped a small camera the size of a shirt button inside the windbreaker's inner pocket. 40 minutes away, at Sweetwater Table's corporate office downtown, his chief operating officer, Renee Ashford, was blind what he undo the frizz on her laptop, a legal associate standing at her shoulder with a notepad and a very tired expression. Because this was the 4th time this year Marcus had insisted on doing this the hard way instead of just reading a quarterly compliance report like a normal CEO. The sun still hadn't fully cleared the tree line when Marcus pulled the Camry into the gravel lot of the Sweetwater Table location on Bell Road in Antioch, a working-class suburb southeast of Nashville, with more languages spoken in its high school hallway than in half the boardrooms Marcus had ever sat in. It was 8:53 on a Saturday morning. The breakfast rush hadn't broken yet. Through the front window, he could see the checkered linoleum floor, the mismatched vinyl booths in forest green, a jukebox in the corner that only ever seemed to play Otis Redding on a loop, no matter which location you walked into. He designed every square foot of that floor plan himself, back when the whole company was one frying pan and a $600 loan from his grandmother. He wanted the place to feel like her kitchen, warm, safe, a place where nobody had to earn the right to sit down. He stepped inside. The bell over the door gave its soft chime. The air smelled maple syrup and burnt coffee grounds drifting out of the kitchen vent. Here's the thing you have to understand about mornings like this lets one nothing ever looks wrong at first glance. A black family of four sat by the window, the mother tucking a napkin into her son's collar. Two college kids in Titans hoodies split a stack of pancakes near the jukebox. A Latino couple stood at the counter with a toddler on the father's hip, waiting to order. Behind the register stood Dylan Cole, white late 20s, leaning against the back wall with one earbud in, thumb scrolling his phone so uniform and shirt untucked on one side. Beside him, Ashley Pruitt, white early 30s, whispering something that made them both laugh. The Latino couple stood there. 10 seconds. 20. 30. The father cleared his throat, polite, patient. Ashley finally glanced up and said flatly, without a shred of warmth in it, "What do y'all want?" 15 seconds after that, a young white couple walked through the door, and Dylan snapped upright, pulled his earbud out, and lit up like a Christmas display. "Hey, welcome to Sweetwater. What are we feeling this morning?" Same counter, same register, same 60 seconds of time. Two completely different worlds. Through the pass-through window behind the grill, a woman named Odessa Grant watched all of it without turning her head. Her spatula and instinct after 6 years on that flat top. She was black, mid-50s, and her jaw had gone tight the way it always did whenever Dylan and Ashley worked a Saturday shift together. She had filed 2 written complaints about the two of them with the regional manager. Both had vanished into thin air. The regional manager's name was Gary Cole, Dylan's uncle. Marcus stood just inside the door for a moment, taking it all in, face giving way absolutely nothing. Then he walked to the counter, and that's exactly when Dylan opened his mouth. "We gotta be careful these days," Dylan said, loud enough for the nearest booth to catch it. "You just never know with some folks." Marcus said nothing. Hands stayed loose at his sides. He watched Dylan's fingers move across the register screen a little too fast, a little too practiced. Marcus caught the total flash up before it disappeared. Platter up 1249 tax, and then a third line that had absolutely no business existing. Convenience handling fee $2.25. Total $15.04. "What is a convenience handling fee?" Marcus asked. Dylan didn't look up. "Standard charge. Everybody pays it. I've eaten at 6 other Sweetwater locations. Never once seen that on a receipt." Dylan planted both palms flat on the counter and leaned in, voice dropping into that particular register that dares you to say one more word. "Maybe those other places run things different. Here, that's just what it costs. You want the food or not?" A woman 2 booths back froze mid-bite, fork hovering, then looked away fast, pretending she hadn't heard a thing. Marcus held Dylan's stare for exactly 2 seconds. Then he nodded once. "I'll take the food." Dylan made change off the 20 and didn't count a cent of it out loud. He shoved the coins across the counter with the back of his hand, careless. And 2 orchidors and a dime spun off the edge and clattered to the tile. Looked down at them, then back up at Marcus, mouth curling into a lazy little smirk. "Oops, oops." Ash pressed her hand over her mouth. A muffled laugh slipped through her fingers anyway. Marcus bent down without a word and picked up every coin one at a time, sliding them into his jacket pocket. Then he walked to a booth near the kitchen window and sat. And under the table, thumbs moving quiet and quick, he texted Renee, "Fake fee on my ticket. $2. 25 not in the system. Keep the feed rolling." Renee wrote back in 6 seconds, confirmed. Legals watching live. The diner hummed on around him. Forks against ceramic, low chatter. the grill hissing by the pass-through. Otis Redding drifting out of the jukebox, something slow, something aching. The smell of butter melting into hash browns and coffee going bitter on the burner. 7 minutes later, the white couple who'd ordered right after him got their plates. Ashley carried both out gentle as a church offering, set them down with 2 hands, smiled wide. Y'all holler if you need anything. Eggs golden and steaming. Biscuits split open, glistening with real butter, a mountain of hash browns crisped brown at the edges. Marcus was still waiting. 5 more minutes. 12 total. Ashley finally dropped his plate down with a thud that rattled the silverware and walked off without a single word. The eggs were gray and rubbery, dried out at the edges like they'd been sitting under a heat lamp since sunrise. The biscuit was the leftover heel from the pan, barely warmed through. The hash browns amounted to maybe 6 bites, scattered thin across the plate like an afterthought. 2 booths over, a white man about Marcus's age was eating the exact same platter fluffy eggs, flecked with black pepper, a full golden biscuit, a proper hill of hash browns. Same menu, same kitchen, same cook, same $12.49. 2 entirely different meals. Through the pass-throughs, a spatula stopped on flip. She'd cooked that ticket herself, soft, scrambled biscuit split from the center of the pan. Hash browns piled the way every ticket got piled. What sat in front of Marcus was not what left her grill. She looked toward the front counter. Dylan stood there with his arms crooked, watching Marcus over the rim of a coffee cup, with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ashley leaned in and whispered something. Dylan barked out one short, ugly laugh. Marcus picked up his fork, cut into the eggs cold in the center. Chalk he chewed once, set the fork down, and pushed the plate 2 inches forward. He didn't complain, didn't wave anybody over. He just sat there, watching the room, filing away every detail in complete silence. Here's a question worth sitting with before we keep going. How many times has something like this happened right in front of you? And you told yourself it wasn't your business to notice. Because Marcus wasn't done watching yet, not even close. The front bell chimed again, and an elderly black woman stepped through the door slow, one hand steadying herself against the frame. She wore a pressed floral dress and a small straw hat pinned at an angle, the kind of hat you wear when Sunday means something to you. A thin gold cross rested at her collarbone. She made her way to the counter with small, careful steps. "Excuse me, sweetheart," she said softly to Ashley. "Could you mark what the soup of the day is?" Ashley kept wiping down the register screen, eyes fixed downward. 5 seconds. 15. The woman waited with the kind of patience that only comes from a lifetime of waiting like this. "Excuse me," she said again, a touch louder. Ashley finally looked up with a long, theatrical sigh, the kind engineered to make somebody feel like a burden just for existing. "Malcolm, you're gonna have to speak up. I genuinely cannot understand a word you're saying." She had been speaking perfectly clearly. Everybody within 15 feet had heard her just fine. Dylan cut in without even turning his head. "Maybe try the senior menu. Simpler pictures for simpler folks." Ashley bit her lip. A laugh slipped out through her nose, small and ugly. The old woman's fingers tightened on the strap of her purse. Her chin dipped slowly toward her chest, lips pressed tight, not in anger, but in that quiet, rehearsed way of someone who learned decades ago that certain counters were never built to welcome her. She turned and walked out without ordering. The bell chimed soft behind her, and that small sound hung in the air like a note nobody wanted to hear the end of. Nobody called after her. Nobody moved. Marcus set his coffee mug down, slow, jaw tight. Under the table, his phone buzzed against his leg. "Renee, tell me you caught that," he typed back. "Every second of it. That's Loretta Combs. Been a regular here 4 years running. Loyalty card and everything? What do you want to do?" "Not yet," he wrote. "I need to see the whole picture first." He sipped his coffee. Lukewarm. Bitter. He drank it anyway. A few minutes later, on his way back from the restroom, Marcus passed the kitchen door, standing king-cricked a few inches open. Odessa stood just inside, spatula in hand, apron dusted white with flour, eyes locked on his through the gap. "Don't eat the hash browns," she whispered. Marcus stopped cold. "I saw him, right before your plate went out," she said, words tumbling fast now, like something finally breaking loose after being dammed up too long. He turned his back to the window, but I saw his hand hover over that plate. I've tried reporting the two of them. Twice. Wrote it all down, handed it straight to the regional manager. Nothing. He's Dylan's uncle. Both complaints just disappeared into thin air. Her eyes were glassy, not crying, just worn down, the look of somebody who'd been carrying something too heavy for far too long, completely alone. Marcus looked at her steady. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I hear you. I promise you that." She nodded once, fast, blinked hard, and slipped back behind the swinging door. Marcus returned to his booth. The hash browns sat untouched, glistening dully under the fluorescent lights. He pushed the plate to the far edge of the table and picked up his phone one more time. Full legal standby, he typed to Renee. "Call the health department. Pull every complaint filed at this location for the last 14 months. Already ahead of you," she wrote back. "Team's already moving." Marcus set the phone face down. His posture never changed. His voice hadn't risen once. But behind his eyes, something had shifted, quiet and permanent, like a lock clicking into place. He stayed in that booth another 40 minutes, ordering a second coffee just to have a reason to sit and what he watched, which wasn't random anymore. It was a system running smooth and practiced, like it had been oiled by months of nobody ever stopping it. A black father walked in holding his son's hand, the boy maybe 6 years old, eyes wide at the jukebox glowing in the corner. Dylan rang them up without a greeting, without once meeting the man's eyes. The total came out $4 over menu price. When the father asked why, Dylan just shrugged. Prices went up last week. They hadn't. Marcus knew every price on that board because he'd signed off on every single one of them personally. The Latina woman ordered sweet tea to go. Ashley filled the cup 2/3 and snapped the lid on without a word. The woman looked at it, said nothing, and left. 3 minutes later, a white teenage boy ordered the same sweet tea. Ashley filled it to the brim, smiled, and said, "There you go, hon. Same drink, same cup, same hands behind the different customer entirely." Marcus opened the calculator app on his phone under the table. Based on everything he'd watched, the fake fees, the padded totals, the shortage portions, he figured Dylan was skimming somewhere between $200 and $300 a shift, with Ashley voiding the fee charges after each customer walked out, so the drawer balanced clean at closing. This wasn't sloppy. This was organized, and it had clearly been running for months. Then the front door swung open hard. A young black man walked in, college age, maybe 20, a Tennessee State hoodie on his back, and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He stepped toward the register, pulling out his phone to check the menu. Dylan straightened up fast. "Bag stays up front." "Store policy." The young man blinked. "What? Your bag. Leave it by the door." "Store policy. There was no such policy." Sweetwater Table had never had a bag check rule at any of its 42 locations. Not one Marcus had ever written or approved. It simply did not exist. The young man hesitated, glanced around the room, then slid the bag off his shoulder and set it down by the umbrella stand near the entrance. 15 seconds later, a white man in his 30s walked in, carrying a leather messenger bag the size of a duffel, and strolled straight past Dylan to a booth. Dylan never even glanced his way. The young man had seen the whole thing happen in real time. He turned back to Dylan, voice quiet but firm. "You didn't ask him about his bag." Dylan's face changed instantly. The lazy grin dropped. He stepped out from behind the counter, pointing them until they stood barely 2 feet apart. "You got a problem? Because I can call the cops right now, and they love dealing with guys like you." The young man's jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to the floor. He said nothing else. When his food came, he grabbed it, grabbed his bag, and walked out without looking back. The bell barely made a sound behind him. Marcus set his coffee down. His hand stayed steady, but his knuckles had gone pale around the mug handle. He stood up, walked to the counter, every step measured and slow, the soles of his worn-out shoes barely whispering against the tile. He looked Dylan dead in the eyes. "Do you treat all your customers this way? Or just the ones who look like me?" The whole diner went quiet. A fork stopped scraping somewhere behind him. Otis Redding hit a gap between songs, and that silence stretched out enormous. Dylan blinked, then his face hardened, shoulders squaring. "Excuse me?" Ashley snatched up the store phone like a stage prop, finger hovering over the buttons. "Should I call somebody?" Marcus didn't move. "I'd like to speak to your manager." Dylan let out one sharp laugh. "I am the manager on first shift, and my uncle's the regional manager. So good luck with that, pal." Marcus nodded slow. "All right." He turned to walk back to his booth. "You don't like how we run things here?" Dylan called after him. "Door's right there. Nobody's stopping you." Marcus didn't answer. He sat back down, and that should have been the end of it. But Dylan wasn't finished. He picked up the store phone and dialed, voice slicing into something practiced and casual. The voice of somebody who'd done this exact routine before and knew precisely how to make it land. "Yeah, hi, I got a customer here getting aggressive, refusing to leave, making threats at my staff. Can you send someone out?" Marcus hadn't raised his voice once, hadn't moved toward anyone. He'd asked one question. But Dylan was building a story, brick by brick, and Ashley stepped right in to help him build it, voice going loud and shaky and theatrical for the benefit of the room. "Sir, we asked you nicely to leave. We don't want any trouble here." Two customers by the window quietly pulled out their phones and started filming. An older white man in a trucker cap shook his head slow. A black woman with two kids gathered her things fast and moved to a booth further from the counter, pulling her children in close. 4 minutes later, a was pulled into the gravel lot. Lights off, but every single head in the diner turned toward the window anyway. Officer Ray Holloway walked in, mid-40s, broad-shouldered, close-cropped hair, one hand resting easy on his belt, eyes sweeping the room before a word got said. Dylan was already moving toward him, gesturing hard at Marcus's booth. "That guy right there, he's been harassing my staff, won't leave, getting aggressive. I called because I was genuinely worried about everybody's safety in here." Officer Holloway looked at Marcus. Marcus hadn't moved. Hands folded on the table, coffee half empty in front of him. "Sir," Holloway said, walking over, "I'm going to need to see some ID." Marcus reached into his pocket slow and set his driver's license on the table. Holloway read the name, looked at Marcus's face, looked at the license again, then turned to Dylan, standing there with his arms crossed and his chin up high. "Officer," Marcus said, calm as still water, "I asked one question about the service here. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't threatened a soul. I haven't refused to leave." Holloway looked around the diner. The two customers were still filming. The trucker cap man caught his eye and shook his grit, slow and clear, a gesture that said everything without a single word attached to it. Nobody in that diner backed Dylan's story. Not one person. "I don't see a disturbance here," Holloway said, his tone shifting cooler by the second. "I'm going to need to talk to the both of you separately." Dylan's confident expression cracked, just barely, like, man, yes, the script in his head might not play out the way he'd rehearsed it 100 times before. But it was already too late for scripts, because through the window, a black Range Rover had just pulled into the lot. And the woman stepping out of it was about to seeing absolutely everything. The bell over the door chimed one more time. Renee Ashford walked in navy blazer, pressed white blouse, heels clicking sharp against the tile with every step, a leather folder tucked under one arm and a tablet in her other hand. Behind her, two men in black polos with a small gold Sweetwater table logo stitched over the heart. Corporate security. Every conversation in that diner dropped to a murmur. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Dylan glanced over, didn't recognize a single one of them. He stepped forward, chest puffed, still riding the adrenaline of his own performance. Ma'am, we're kinda in the middle of something. You're gonna need to wait. Renee didn't slow, didn't look at him. She walked past the counter, past Officer Holloway, and stopped directly in front of Marcus's booth. Mr. Bell, she said, loud enough for the whole room to catch every syllable. We've got everything on the feed. Legal's already reviewed the footage in full. We're ready whenever you are. Dylan's mouth fell open. His eyes darted from Renee to Marcus and back again. Mr. Bell? Renee turned to face Dylan and Ashley, who now stood frozen behind the register, phone still gripped in Ashley's shaking hand. My name is Renee Ashford. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Sweetwater Table Incorporated. The words hit the room like a hammer against glass. Dylan took a half step back, hand dropping off his hip. Ashley set the phone down slow, like it had suddenly gotten too heavy to hold. Marcus stood up from the booth. No rush in it. He reached up, unzipped the windbreaker collar halfway, and there it was, the small camera clipped inside a collar, no bigger than a shirt button, and it had been recording every single second since he walked through that door. My name is Marcus Bell, he said, voice steady. I'm from the founder, owner, CCAE of Sweetwater Double. Every location, every menu, every paycheck. He paused, including both of yours. Dead silence. No grill hissing, no music, just fluorescent lights, hens humming, and Dylan's breathing getting louder by the second. Dylan's face went from red to bone white in under 5 seconds. His lips moved. Nothing came out. Then finally a broken stammer. Wait, that's not, I didn't know. You didn't know what, Marcus said calm, but there was iron sitting underneath it now. You didn't know the man you overcharged and disrespected and called the cops on built this place out of a frying pan and a $600 loan from his grandmother? You didn't know the man whose food you tampered with signs your paycheck every 2 weeks? Dylan had no answer left in him. His mouth hung open like a door with a broken hinge. Renee turned her tablet around so the whole room could see the screen. Split view. On the left, Marcus's own camera footage, every insult, every smirk, every fake fee punched into the register, captured clean and close. On the diner's own security cameras, angles Dylan and Ashley had apparently forgotten existed or assumed nobody ever bothered to check. Dylan pocketing cash after voiding fees. Ashley helping cover the voids. Dylan's hand hovering over Marcus's plate before it left the pass-through. The elderly woman mocked and turned away. The college student made to give up his bag while a white man walked past untouched. 4 months of footage, laid bare in 4 minutes. Officer Holloway watched the screen without moving. His jaw tightened. When the food tampering clip played, his hand drifted toward the notepad, clipped to his belt. One last move. Voice cracking, reaching for the only lifeline he had ever known. My uncle, Gary Cole, he's the regional manager. Just call him. He'll sort this out. Gary Cole, Renee said, cutting him off clean, was placed on administrative leave 45 minutes ago. Our legal team is already speaking with him directly about buried employee complaints and falsified performance reviews. She let that sit for a long second. There's nobody left to call, Dylan. His knees nearly buckled. He caught himself on the counter with one hand. Ashley let out a short, choked sound, while between a gasp and a sob, Klaus slows his notepad. I'm going to need a full copy of that footage. The food tampering specifically. That's a felony under Tennessee law. Renata nodded, already prepared. Your department will have it within the hour. Marcus stood in the middle of his own diner, surrounded by the wreckage of two people whose entire world had just folded in on itself in under 3 minutes. He didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice. He looked at Dylan, the man who'd told him to try the mission down the road, and said quietly, You had a good job. A steady paycheck, customers who trusted you, and this is what you did with it. Dylan said nothing. For the first time all morning, he had absolutely nothing left to say. Then he broke. Shoulders sagging, palms up, voice cracking into something meant to sound like remorse. Look, I was just having a bad day. I swear it was jokes. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. A bad day, Marcus repeated. We've got footage going back 4 months, Dylan. 4 months of fake fees, 4 months of skimmed cash, 4 months of customers humiliated for the color of their skin, 4 months of Odessa Grant filing complaints your uncle threw straight in a drawer. Each sentence Landstone stripped in still water. That's not a bad day. That's who you are when you think nobody's watching. Ashley tried next, tears streaming, hands clasped tight against her chest. I didn't want any of this. Dylan told me what to do. I was scared of losing my job. I just went along with it. Renee opened her folder and laid 3 time-stamped screenshots on the counter, one at a time. This is you laughing after an elderly woman walked out in tears. This is you voiding a fraudulent charge while Dylan counted the cash behind you. This is you whispering which customers to target next. She looked Ashley dead in the eye. You weren't a bystander. You were a partner. Ashley grabbed the counter and sobbed, loud and ugly. Nobody moved to comfort her. Marcus straightened. Dylan Cole, Ashley Pruitt. You're both terminated, effective immediately. Gross misconduct, theft, discriminatory conduct, health code violations. Final paychecks will be mailed. You not return to this or any Sweetwater table location, ever. Officer Holloway stepped forward. I'll need you both available for a follow-up. That food tampering alone is a potential felony. Dylan didn't fight it. He walked toward the door with his head down, flanked by corporate security, his footsteps slow and heavy on the same checkered he'd stood on all morning, like he owned the place. Ashley followed, still crying, clutching her purse. The door swung shut. The bell chimed, the same cheerful little sound it always made, except this time it landed like a period at the end of a very long sentence. A few customers started clapping, slow at first, then louder. The man in the trucker cap gave Marcus one nod. The black woman who'd pulled her kids to the far booth wiped her eyes. Marcus turned toward the kitchen. Odessa stood behind the pass-through, spatula still in hand, apron still dusted white, watching him like someone watching a locked door swing open for the first time in years, afraid to trust it was real. Odessa, he said gently, you tried to do right by this place twice. The system here failed you both times. That ends today. I'd like to promote you to shift supervisor effective right now. Every complaint you ever filed is now part of a formal corporate investigation. Your voice always mattered. It just took too long for the right person to hear it. Odessa's spatula slipped from her fingers and clattered against the steel counter. She pressed both hands over her mouth. Then the tears came, not the panicked kind Ashley had cried moments earlier, but the slow, deep, shaking kind that only shows up when something you just stopped believing in finally happens right in front of you. Now here's the part most people never get to see, because the story doesn't end when the two of them walked out that door. In a lot of ways, it was only just getting started. Sweetwater Table's legal team brought in an independent auditor and tore that Antioch location apart, receipt by receipt, register log by register log, security backup by security backup. What they found was worse than even Marcus had braced himself for. Dylan's fake fee scheme had been running for 14 straight months. Not weeks. 14 months of padded totals and skimmed cash, totaling $41,217. Ashley had been directly involved in at least $17,000 of that, voiding transactions and smoothing over the numbers at closing time every single shift. But the rot ran deeper than 2 cashiers. Gary Cole, regional manager over this location and 9 others across Middle Tennessee, had received 3 written complaints about Dylan and Ashley's conduct. 3 complaints with dates, details, and signatures, submitted through the proper channel. All 3 buried in a locked drawer nobody ever opened. Odessa's 2 complaints were among them. Handwritten, specific, completely ignored. Gary had also been quietly falsifying Dylan's performance reviews for over a year. On paper, Dylan looked like a model employee, punctual, customer-focused, recommended for advancement. The reviews read like fiction. That's precisely what they were. When Sweetwater's attorneys confronted him, Gary's only answer was, he's family. I was trying to give him a chance to grow. 14 months of theft and discrimination, and he called it a chance to grow. The Metro Nashville Police Department moved fast once Renee handed over the footage. Within 72 hours, detectives had reviewed every minute of body camera and security video and cross-referenced it against the auditor's financial records. Charges came down hard. Dylan Colt was charged with theft, felony food tampering under Tennessee law, filing a false police report, and civil rights violations tied to discriminatory service practices. Bail was set at $31,000. He couldn't make it. Ashley Pruitt, charged with accessory to theft and conspiracy to commit fraud, released on own recognizance but barred from leaving the county. Gary Cole was charged with obstruction, falsifying business records, and conspiracy to commit fraud. He turned himself in at the Antioch precinct on a Tuesday morning wearing a pressed suit and a blank expression that suggested he still didn't fully understand how his nephew's behavior had become his own criminal case. Meanwhile, the story had already outgrown the four walls of that diner. One of the customers filming that morning, the moment Dylan has called the police, the moment Renee walked in, the moment Marcus revealed exactly who he was posted it online that same Saturday afternoon. By Sunday night, it had crossed 6 million views. By Monday, a Nashville news station picked it up, a bold white headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Sweetwater Table CEO goes undercover, catches employees stealing and discriminating on camera. By Tuesday, the story had gone national. One clip in particular, Marcus's quiet level voice saying, "I'm the founder, owner, and CEO of Sweets Club, including both of yours," got clipped and shared so many times it turned into its own moment. Marcus held a press conference 2 days later at Sweetwater Table's headquarters downtown. He stood behind a podium with the company logo on the wall behind him. The same logo stitched onto the polo shirts his security team had worn walking into that diner. He announced 3 changes across all 42 locations. First, mandatory anti-discrimination training for every employee, cashier to regional manager, to be completed within 60 days. Second, a confidential complaint hotline routed directly to corporate, bypassing regional managers entirely, so no complaint could ever get buried in a locked drawer again. Third, a customer advocacy fund seeded with $400,000 of his own money to support anyone who experienced discrimination at any food or services business across Middle Tennessee. Then he said something that made the whole room go still. "There was a woman who came into my restaurant that Saturday morning. An elderly woman in a floral dress and a church hat. She walked up to the counter and asked what the soup of the day was. And 2 of my employees laughed at her until she turned around and walked out the door." He paused. The room didn't breathe. Her name is Loretta Combs. She's been a Sweetwater customer for 4 years. We found her through our loyalty program. I called her myself last night. His voice softened. She's getting a lifetime dining pass to any Sweetwater Table location in the country. And she got a personal apology. Not from my PR department, from me. 3 months later, the cases went to trial. Dylan was convicted on every count. The felony food tampering charge carried the most weight. Backed by lab results from the hash brown sample, Marcus had preserved and handed straight to police that same afternoon. The judge called Dylan's conduct a calculated pattern of cruelty dressed up as casual indifference. 2.5 years in a state prison, full restitution of $41,217. Ashley took a plea, pleading guilty to accessory charges, and received 16 months of probation, 180 hours of community service at a local food bank, and a permanent mark on her record that would follow her into every job interview for the rest of her life. Garrow's sentenced to 10 months and permanently barred from holding a managerial position in Tennessee's food service industry. Sweetwater's legal team also filed a civil suit against all 3 for damages to the company's reputation and lost revenue, which settled quietly out of court. Separately, 9 affected customers identified through register logs, security footage, and loyalty records, joined a formal civil rights complaint with the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. The case was later cited in a statewide training module distributed to more than 2,000 food service businesses across the state. As the system that had protected Dylan, enabled Ashley, and silenced Odessa for years, got dismantled completely, publicly, permanently. And all of it started with one man in a faded windbreaker ordering scrambled eggs on a Saturday morning. 6 months after that, the Antioch location looked a different place, though nothing about the building had actually changed. Same checkered floor, same forest green booths, same jukebox in the corner, still spinning Otis Redding on a lazy Saturday loop. Marcus built it to last, and it had. What changed was the feeling in the room. Odessa Grant stood behind the counter now, not hiding behind the pass-through window, not whispering warnings through a cracked kitchen door. Shift supervisor. Her name tag said it. Her posture said it louder. She greeted every single person who walked through that door, and she meant it every time. The staff around her were new, diverse, properly trained, and they smiled because they wanted to, not because somebody happened to be watching. Every Saturday morning at 8:53, an elderly woman in a floral dress and a small church hat walked through that front door. Loretta Combs. She didn't hesitate at the entrance anymore, didn't brace for whatever might come from behind that counter. She walked in like she belonged there, because she did. Morning, Miss Loretta, Odessa would call out. Your usual? Yes, baby. The soup. And some of that cornbread if you've got it. Always got it for you. Loretta sat in the booth by the window, the same one she used to sit in, before two cashiers, made her feel like she didn't belong in her own neighborhood. Now, she sat there with her soup, her cornbread, and a lifetime dining pass tucked in her purse like a badge she'd earned the hard way. One Saturday, in late spring, the front bell chimed, and a man walked in wearing a pressed charcoal suit this time, polished shoes, a watch catching the light off the window. Odessa looked up. Her eyes went wide. Then she smiled, the kind that starts somewhere deep and takes a moment to reach the surface. Marcus Bell crossed the checkered floor of his own diner. Odessa came around the counter and hugged him without a word. He hugged her back. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. Neither of them needed to. Outside afterward, he stood looking up at the Sweetwater table sign, the same one he sketched himself 20-something years earlier, back when the whole company was just a dream held together by a frying pan and a $600 loan from his grandmother. He thought about the 16-year-old version of himself, washing dishes in a diner that looked a lot like this one. Not so different Frantok, where some nights the owner wouldn't even let him eat the food that was headed for the trash anyway. He built Sweetwater Table so that anybody, no matter what they looked like or where they'd come from or what they were wearing that day, could walk through a door and feel like they mattered. What Dylan and Ashley did was a betrayal of that whole mission. What Gary did was a betrayal of trust. But what Odessa did, refusing to stay silent, even when seems easy to be listening, that's the reason the mission survived at all. The people who abuse a little bit of power are always the ones most terrified the moment real authority walks through the door. And the people who stay silent when they see something wrong, eventually they become part of the wrong. But the people who speak up, even when it's scary for you, even when the system's broken and their complaints keep disappearing, those are the people who end up changing everything. So, here's what I want to know. Has there ever been a moment you watched somebody get treated differently? At a restaurant, at your own job, and you had to decide in real time what kind of person you were going to be? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. If this story landed the way it landed for me, hit that like button before you go. Send it to somebody who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, well, you already know what to do. Here's the only thing worth carrying with you out of this one. Who you are when nobody's watching is the only version of you that's actually real. Not the smile you save for your boss. Not the handshake you give the man in the expensive suit. The real you shows up at 9 in the morning on a random Tuesday, when you think there's no camera anywhere near you and nobody keeping score. And here's what most people never let themselves believe until it's too late. Somebody's always watching, even when it doesn't feel like it. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but the truth has a strange way of finding it eventually. Every shortcut, every small cruelty, every person you wrote off because you figured you'd never see them again, it all finds its way back around. Not because the universe keeps score like some kind of magic trick, but because people remember. And one day, the right person remembers at exactly the wrong time for you. So do yourself a favor. Be the same person in every single room you walk into. Treat the man in the worn-out windbreaker the same way you treat the man in the tailored suit. Not because you never know who you're standing in front of, but because it's simply the right way to treat another human being, whether anybody's watching or not. Like this video, share it with somebody, and subscribe for more true stories every week. And remember, the cameras don't have to be rolling for the truth to fully find Schneid. It always does. Declaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace ethics, and social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.